What if I told you the United States has just pushed one of its most important allies straight into China's arms? And not some minor player, but Brazil, the largest economy in Latin America, the agricultural powerhouse of the global South, and a country Washington once considered indispensable. For decades, Brazil was seen as America's anchor in the Western Hemisphere, a reliable trade partner, and even a counterweight to rising leftist governments during the Cold War. Yet today, that relationship is unraveling before our eyes. And the irony is this: America has no one to blame but itself. This shift didn't happen overnight. It has been building for years, but one decision just made it undeniable. On August 6, 2025, Washington imposed a shocking 50% tariff on Brazilian coffee. For a commodity as global and universal as coffee, this wasn't just an economic move, it was a political bombshell. Overnight, U.S. importers began canceling contracts, coffee prices spiked, and Brazilian producers who had relied on the American market for decades found themselves cut out. Instead of weakening Brazil, the tariff pushed it further into Beijing's orbit, where Chinese buyers eagerly absorbed the slack. For millions of Americans, it means paying more for their daily cup. For Brazil, it means one more reason to deepen ties with China. But this is not just about coffee. It's about soybeans, beef, minerals, infrastructure, and ultimately, influence. To understand why this matters so much, we need to look back at the US-Brazil relationship. For decades, Washington was Brazil's second largest market, buying billions in beef, orange juice, and industrial goods. U.S. companies built car factories in São Paulo, invested in Rio's growing tech sector, and partnered with Brazilian governments at every major global summit. Brazil, for its part, walked a careful line, a founding member of BRICS on one hand, but still a key Western ally on the other. Then came the trade wars. When Donald Trump launched tariffs against China in 2018, Beijing retaliated by slashing U.S. soybean imports. In that moment, China turned to Brazil, and the result changed the global agricultural order forever. Today, nearly 3/4 of Brazil's soybean exports, worth over $50 billion annually, go straight to China. For perspective, before the trade war, American farmers dominated that market. Today, their share has collapsed, while Brazil has become indispensable to China's food security. And Beijing is not just buying beans, it's building the systems to ensure that flow never stops. China's state-owned agriculture giant COFCO is constructing one of its largest export terminals outside of Asia at the port of Santos, Latin America's busiest harbor. Once complete, it will nearly triple capacity from 4.5 million to 14 million tons a year. Santos already handles more than 180 million tons of cargo annually, and according to Brazilian officials, China directly influences a quarter of all trade there. Every ton of soybeans leaving Santos for Shanghai is a ton no longer leaving from Iowa or Illinois. The U.S. Department of Agriculture once estimated that Trump's first trade war cost American farmers $27 billion in lost exports. And yet, here we are again, watching history repeat itself. This time, the commodity is not soybeans, but coffee. A 50% tariff is enough to make Brazilian coffee nearly unviable in the U.S. market. And who steps in? China, the world's fastest-growing coffee consumer. In cities like Shanghai, coffee shops now outnumber those in New York and London. By approving nearly 200 Brazilian coffee exporters to sell directly into its market, China is turning America's punishment into its own gain. And agriculture is only the first act. Beijing has even bigger ambitions. Chinese companies are financing hundreds of miles of railway lines across Brazil's agricultural heartland. These lines connect farms directly to ports, slashing transport costs and bypassing bottlenecks that once limited Brazil's competitiveness. Even more ambitious is the proposed 3,000-mile transcontinental railway, linking Brazil's farmland to Peru's Pacific coast, ending at a $3.5 billion deepwater port built by China. Once finished, shipping times to Asia could drop by up to 10 days, a game-changer for global agriculture. Think about the scale of this. China isn't just buying soybeans. It's literally laying down the tracks to move them. It isn't just approving coffee exporters, it's reshaping the supply chain itself. Every railway, every port, every terminal creates dependence, not on Washington, but on Beijing. By now, the pattern should be obvious. Washington builds tariffs, Beijing builds infrastructure. Washington punishes with trade restrictions, Beijing rewards with market access. And countries like Brazil, caught in the middle, have to make a choice. So far, Brazil is making its choice clear. Agriculture may be the headline, but energy is the backbone of any modern partnership. And here too, China is digging deep into Brazil's future. Across the Northeast, Chinese companies have constructed massive wind farms, some generating hundreds of millions of kilowatt-hours annually, powering hundreds of thousands of homes and slashing carbon emissions by millions of tons. One project alone created over 2,000 jobs in communities that had long been left behind. Another produces enough electricity for nearly 500,000 households each year. These aren't distant promises. They are operational projects on Brazilian soil, delivering visible results. And this is why Beijing's strategy works. For ordinary Brazilians, these investments mean jobs, electricity, and growth. For Brazil's government, they mean progress on climate goals and energy independence. For China, they mean long-term influence locked in through infrastructure and goodwill. Beyond energy, the partnership stretches into space. Since the 1990s, Brazil and China have jointly launched satellites under the CBERS program, the China-Brazil Earth Resources Satellite Initiative. These satellites track deforestation in the Amazon, monitor urban expansion, and provide vital data during natural disasters. When floods hit southern Brazil this year, CBERS satellites helped assess the damage in real time. This kind of cooperation is not symbolic. It embeds China directly into Brazil's science, planning, and disaster relief systems. But perhaps the most transformative change is financial. Earlier this year, Brazil confirmed plans to issue its first panda bond, sovereign debt denominated in Chinese yuan, sold inside China's domestic market. For Brazil, the math is simple. U.S. Treasuries yield over 4.5%. Chinese bonds yield closer to 1.7%. Borrowing in yuan is cheaper, and it reduces reliance on the dollar. This is more than diversification. It's a step into a parallel financial system where Wall Street no longer dominates. And Brazil isn't alone. Across Latin America, the use of the yuan in trade settlements has increased nearly five-fold since 2019. Brazil and Argentina are already trading iron ore, soybeans, and lithium directly in yuan. This is what multipolarity looks like, not just in politics, but in money. For Washington, this is a nightmare scenario. Losing market share in soybeans is bad. Losing energy partnerships is worse. But losing financial dominance, watching the dollar's grip on Latin America weaken, that's existential. And yet, this is exactly what is happening. One panda bond and one yuan settlement at a time. So, what's the bigger picture? Brazil is emerging not just as a commodity exporter, but as the breadbasket of the global South. Its soybeans feed China, its coffee fills Chinese cafes, its energy is powered by Chinese turbines, and its debt is financed in Chinese currency. All of this places Brazil at the heart of a new multipolar order, one in which the United States is no longer the only game in town. The symbolism could not be clearer. The United States imposes tariffs that raise prices for its own citizens and alienate its partners. China responds with investments that create jobs, infrastructure, and cheaper financing. Which one do you think countries like Brazil will choose? If you've stayed with me this far, you understand why this matters. Because Brazil's story is not just Brazil's story. It's the story of what happens when America punishes and China rewards. It's the story of a shifting world order where countries no longer automatically align with Washington, but instead look eastward for opportunity. And here's the truth. This trend will not stop with Brazil. Tomorrow, it could be another ally. Every time this cycle repeats, tariffs from Washington, investments from Beijing, the future tilts further toward China. This is the real definition of a multipolar world. It isn't just military or diplomatic. It's trade routes, ports, satellites, and financial instruments. It's the everyday choices countries make when they decide who they can trust with their future. And that's why we cover these stories. Because the mainstream media rarely connects the dots. But you and I know better. We can see the pattern. We can see the future forming right in front of us. So here's my message to you. If you want to stay ahead of the curve, if you want to understand where the world is really heading, and if you believe stories like this need to be told, stay with us. Subscribe and be part of this community. Because every week, we uncover the stories that others ignore, and together we piece together the bigger picture. The bottom line is this: America's trade wars are driving away its partners. China's long-term investments are pulling them closer. Brazil has already chosen its future. And in that choice lies the blueprint for the New World Order. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.